November 1944. The Hürtgen Forest on the border of Germany. This is not a forest. It is a dense, vertical prison of 100-foot-tall pines, shattered by artillery, their splintered trunks pointing to a sky the color of wet concrete. The ground is a liquid slurry of mud, pine needles, and ice. The air itself is a weight, smelling of damp wool, stale sweat, and the acidic tang of cordite that never, ever dissipates. For the men of the 28th Infantry Division, the bloody bucket, this is the world. It is the end of all maps. They are not attacking, they are surviving. The climate is the first enemy. A driving, freezing rain falls, not in drops, but in sheets, turning every foxhole into a shallow grave. Corporal Elias Thorne, 112th Infantry Regiment, lies perfectly still. He is not a large man. The war has carved away any excess. He is 22, but his eyes are 60. He is pressed against the roots of a fallen fir, his M1903 Springfield rifle wrapped in burlap, its scope capped. He is on watch, but his true focus is 30 yards to his left, in a shell crater, a flicker of grey, a field mouse desperately trying to pull a dry leaf into its burrow before the rain soaks it. Thorne watches its frantic, efficient movements. He understands its panic. He idly twists a small piece of copper wire, scavenged from a burned-out radio, around his frozen finger. A nervous tick, a private ritual. He is not thinking of home. He is not thinking of victory. He is thinking only of the mouse and the wire and the cold that seeps into his bones. The silence of the forest is heavy, broken only by the drip of water and the distant mechanical cough of an MG-42. This routine is the normal world. It is a state of suspended animation, a half-life of digging, waiting, and trying not to freeze. Thorne and his platoon sergeant, a man named Rousseau, have an understanding. They are the company's eyes, their designated marksmen. But here, in the Hürtgen, to be a marksman is to be a target. The forest floor is a carpet of tripwires, anti-personnel mines, and listening devices. The enemy is unseen, entrenched in concrete pillboxes, the dragon's teeth of the Siegfried line, West Wall. Thorne's neutrality is the neutrality of a predator gone to ground, a man waiting for a single defining mistake. He slowly unwraps a K-ration cracker, its taste like sawdust, and resumes his watch. The air is so cold it feels like glass in his lungs. This is Tuesday. The stillness shatters. It is not a boom, but a single, sharp crack. 300 yards away, a man in Rousseau's position, a replacement named PFC Allen, has taken a shot. A German NCO, visible for less than 3 seconds, drops. A good shot and a death sentence. Before the echo of Allen's Springfield has faded, the air explodes. The sound is not sequential, it is simultaneous. The brrrp of an MG-42 from a concrete bunker, an R-Type 621, though Allen doesn't know it, tears the trees apart where the shot came from. The thump, thump, thump of a Granatwerfer 34 mortar crew, already dialed in, sends 81mm shells raining down. It is not a response. It is a reflex, a machine swatting a fly. Thorne sees the mud and splinters erupt. He hears a single cut-off scream. Allen is gone, killed not by the enemy, but by the sound of his own rifle. Thorne doesn't move. He just watches, his jaw tight. He knows Allen is dead. He knows Rousseau would have been dead too. He has seen this 3 times in 2 weeks. A sniper cannot survive his own shot. The report of the rifle is a beacon. The Germans are not even aiming at a man. They are aiming at a sound, a location. They have turned the sniper's greatest tool into his greatest liability. He looks down at the piece of copper wire in his hand. He thinks of the mouse in its burrow. He thinks of the traps he used to set for muskrats back in Vermont. A simple snare, a tripwire. A way to be in two places at once. What if the rifle was here, he thinks, but the man? The man was there. The thought is simple, almost childish. He winds the wire tighter around his finger, the metal cutting into his numb skin. What he doesn't know, what he cannot possibly comprehend, is that this desperate idea, born of mud and fear, will soon turn the Siegfried line into a phantom's hunting ground. The strategic dilemma facing V Corps in late 1944 is not one of morale or manpower. It is one of physics and geometry. The Siegfried line is not a line. It is a zone. A 3,000 square mile defense-in-depth system anchored by the Eifel and Hurtgen, composed of 18 Zollerncellular concrete and steel bunkers, pillboxes, dragon's teeth, anti-tank obstacles and command posts. Its designers, building on lessons from World War I, did not intend to stop an assault. They intended to bleed it, to channel infantry into pre-sighted killing zones where machine guns, mortars and artillery could inflict maximum casualties with minimum exposure. The bunkers are not crude firing slits. They are interlocking, mutually supporting fortresses, some with 3-5-meter thick concrete walls, immune to all but the heaviest direct-fire artillery. An intelligence bulletin from the 28th Division's G2 section lays out the problem with cold precision. After-action report 1/12th Infers Regimentus, 14 Nov 1944. Enemy defenses in the Col River Valley are proving virtually impenetrable. Our infantry, lacking close armor support due to terrain, are forced into frontal assaults against R600 series pillboxes. The primary obstacle is not the machine gun itself, but the enemy's acoustic location and counterfire doctrine. Any observed fire from a static U.S. position, particularly sniper or bar fire, is met with pre-registered 81mm and 120mm mortar fire within an estimated 20 to 30 seconds. This response is too rapid for our crews to displace. We are trading riflemen for concrete. The exchange rate is not in our favor. This is the cold, hard math of the West Wall. The failure is total. The 28th Infantry Division, in its attempt to breach this sector, will sustain over 600 combat casualties. It is a meat grinder. The Germans, specifically elements of the 272nd Volksgrenadier Division, and later Waffen-SS units rotated in, are masters of this static warfare. They have had 4 years to register every road, every creek bed, every shell crater. A U.S. sniper who fires from a ruined farmhouse chimney finds that the entire chimney has been pre-sighted by a 75mm PaK-40 anti-tank gun. The moment he fires, the chimney and the man inside it cease to exist. This is not a duel. It is an execution. This is the impossibility. The battlefield has evolved faster than the doctrine. The sniper, the classic image of the lone invisible hunter, is a liability. His rifle's report is a tracer that leads directly back to his own head. The War Department's manuals on marksmanship, on shoot and scoot, are useless here. There is no scoot. There is only mud and trees and concrete and the instant overwhelming violence of German counterfire. The problem is not hitting the target. The problem is surviving the act of hitting the target. A U.S. Army Ordnance Report, classified secret, concludes in late 1944 that field expedient sound suppression for the M1903 and M1 rifles is ineffective and impractical. The experts agreed it couldn't be done. A statistic like 100 casualties is sterile. It is ink on a page, a number for a general to circle in red. In the Hurtgen forest, that number has a face. It is PFC. Allen, his body pulverized by an 81mm mortar shell before he even knew he was dead. It is the exhaustion that settles so deep in the bones that men simply stop digging, preferring to sit in the freezing rain, inviting the shell that will end the misery. It is trench foot, a creeping black rot that starts in the toes and eats its way up the leg, the smell of it, sweet and foul, clinging to the aid station tents. The human consequence is a complete breakdown of morale. The bloody bucket division is bleeding out, and for what? A few 100 yards of shattered forest. The impossibility is not just tactical, it is psychological. The men feel they are fighting a ghost. They are fighting concrete. They are fighting an enemy who is warm, dry, and safe inside steel-reinforced bunkers while they are wet, cold, and dying in the open. A diary entry from a bar gunner in Thorne's company reads, December 2nd, still raining, lost 2 more men, not to bullets, they just stopped. Sat down by a tree and wouldn't move. The cold took them. I can't feel my feet. The krauts are in those pillboxes. We hear them laugh sometimes. They have stoves. We have mud. This is the human cost, the erosion of the will to fight, the reduction of men to a base, animal level of survival. This is the world Elias Thorne inhabits. He is not a hero. He is a survivor. He is not driven by patriotism. He is driven by a cold, logical anger. The anger of a craftsman who sees a problem that must have a solution. He watches men die for a bad equation. He sees the impossibility not as a wall but as a puzzle. The brass says it can't be done. The manuals say it can't be done. The bodies piling up in the mud scream that it can't be done. But Thorne, cleaning the mud from his '03 Springfield, his hands raw and cracked, disagrees. He is not trying to win the war. He's just trying to change the math. Elias Thorne is not a product of West Point. He is a product of Addison County, Vermont. Born in 1922, he is the second son of a dairy farmer who spent the Great Depression fixing neighbors' broken-down equipment just to keep his own farm solvent. Elias grew up with his hands covered in grease and soil. He learned to read the world through its mechanics. To him, a tractor engine, a grandfather clock, and a rifle action are all just systems, a series of parts designed to create a specific result. If the result is wrong, you don't curse the system, you change the parts. This is the core of his philosophy. He is quiet, almost unnervingly so. His officers mistake his silence for slowness. His platoon mates mistake it for fear. It is neither. It is observation. His quirk is his past. Before the war, his winters were spent running a trap line. This is the context that shaped him. To catch a fox, you cannot be at the trap. The fox is too smart. It smells you, it hears you, it sees the disturbed snow. To catch a fox, you must set the trap and leave. The trap must do the work for you. You must separate your intent from your presence. This is the lesson he learned at age 14, setting snares in the Green Mountains. It is a lesson the U.S. Army, with all its logistical might, has failed to grasp. They are still trying to be at the trap when it springs. The Army tried to make him a mechanic. He scored perfectly on the mechanical aptitude tests at Fort Devens. But in basic training, a drill sergeant, frustrated with the poor shooting of his recruits, watched Thorne put 10 rounds of 30.06 into a 3-inch circle at 500 yards. "You're not a mechanic, farm boy," the sergeant had said. "You're a shooter." So they gave him an M19903A4 Springfield with a Weaver 330 scope and sent him to the 28th Infantry Division. They trained him to be the man who fired the shot. They just never trained him for a battlefield where firing the shot was suicide. His background as a trapper and a mechanic makes him uniquely suited for this problem. He sees what no one else sees. They are all still thinking like hunters when they need to be thinking like trappers. The idea does not arrive in a flash of genius. It accretes. It builds from the memory of PFC. Alan's death, the sight of the mouse in its burrow, and the feel of the salvaged copper wire. It culminates in a foxhole during a 48-hour artillery barrage. Thorne is huddling with his rifle, trying to protect its action from the mud. He is dry firing, a drill to keep his senses sharp, just pulling the trigger on an empty chamber. Click. He watches his finger move. He thinks of the traps. A simple snare pull, a wire. He pulls a small geared wheel from a broken German field telephone. He scavenges a 100-foot spool of comms wire. He finds a discarded length of piano wire from a blasted-out farmhouse. He sits in the freezing mud, his hands shaking from cold, and begins to build. His first prototype is a disaster. He tries to rig the comms wire directly to the trigger, but the trigger of a Springfield has a 3 5-pound pull. The thin wire just stretches and snaps. He needs leverage. This is the mechanic's mind at work. He goes to his friend, a bar gunner named Diaz. "I need a mainspring from a 1918. Diaz looks at him. "A spring? From my gun?" "No," Thorne says, his voice low. "From a broken gun, from the salvage pile." Diaz, seeing the look in Thorne's eye, nods. "You're crazy, Thorne. Whatever you're building, it's crazy." "Maybe," Thorne replies, already walking away, "but so is this." He finds what he needs, a bar mainspring and a bent piece of steel shielding from a wrecked Jeep. He spends the night hammering the steel into a small C-shaped clamp that fits over the Springfield stock and trigger guard. He builds a tiny, pivoting lever. The piano wire attaches to the top of the lever. The comms wire attaches to the bottom. The spring provides the tension. It is a rudimentary Rube Goldberg device. His sergeant Russo finds him tinkering. "What in God's name is that, Thorne?" Thorne looks up, his eyes flat. "It's a way to be in 2 places at once." Russo shakes his head. "That's non-standard, Corporal. It's forbidden. If G4 sees this, they'll bust you for tampering with government equipment." Thorne just tightens a screw. "Let them, but I'm not dying for a sound." Russo watches him for a long moment, then tosses him a dry rag. "Well, don't break your rifle. You're the only one who can hit anything with it." He leaves Thorne to his secret. The test site is a ruined cow stable, 200 yards from the American line, 500 yards from a known German observation post in a church steeple. The stable is no man's land, and Thorne has to crawl there in the dark, dragging his rifle and his new contraption. Diaz covers him. "You're nuts," Diaz whispers over the field phone line they're using for communication. "Copy!" Thorne whispers back, his breath fogging. The air is sub-zero. The mud has frozen solid, making his crawl agonizingly loud. He reaches the stable. The place stinks of death and lime. He finds a collapsed section of the wall, a perfect firing port. He clamps the device onto his Springfield stock. It's crude. The steel is cold welded. The lever is a filed-down bolt. He anchors the rifle's bipod with sandbags, aims it at the steeple's bell tower, and fixes it in place. He connects the piano wire to the lever and the comms wire to the piano wire. He unspools the 100 feet of comms wire, crawling back, yard by agonizing yard, to a deep shell crater. He is now 100 feet away from his own rifle. He lies in the crater, the wire in his hand, his binoculars trained on the steeple. He waits for dawn. The first attempt fails. At 0700, a German spotter appears in the bell tower. Thorne pulls the wire. Nothing. The wire has too much slack. The tension is wrong. The German spots the movement of the wire being pulled through the frost and raises his own binoculars. Thorne freezes. He has failed. But the German, seeing nothing else, dismisses it as a falling branch and turns away. Thorne, sweating despite the cold, spends 10 minutes gently, millimeter by millimeter, pulling the slack out of the wire until it is taut. He checks the trigger mechanism through his scope. It's now engaged. He waits. An hour passes. The cold is unbearable. His fingers are numb. At 08:15, a different man appears in the steeple, an officer judging by the field glasses and the crisp collar. He stands, silhouetted against the grey sky, directing mortar fire. This is it. Thorne takes a deep breath. He doesn't pull the wire. He yanks it. From 100 feet away, the 03 Springfield barks, a sharp, flat sound. In the crater, it's just a pop. Thorne is on his binoculars. He sees the officer's head snap back, his body toppling out of the belfry. A perfect shot. And then the impossibility happens. Instantly the forest erupts. 2 MG-42s and a mortar battery open up, not on Thorne's crater, but on the cow stable. They pour hundreds of rounds of 7 92-meter armor-piercing bullets and half a dozen 81-meter mortar shells into the rifle's nest. They blast the stone wall to dust. They destroy the sandbags. They reduce the rifle's position to a smoking pile of rubble. And Elias Thorne, 100 feet away in his crater, watches it all untouched. He just lies there, his heart pounding, a slow, cold smile spreading across his face. He just became a ghost. Diaz's voice crackles over the phone. Jesus, Thorne, I see it, but I don't believe it. If stories like this fascinate you, stay with us. The next chapter of wartime innovation might surprise you. The ghost of the Hurtgen forest now has a method, but his success is not celebrated. It is a problem. 2 days later, after 2 more impossible kills from a position that was subsequently annihilated, Thorne is summoned by his company commander, Captain Miller. Miller's command post is a dugout, reinforced with logs, the air thick with wet canvas and K-ration coffee. Miller, an exhausted lawyer from Ohio, holds Thorne's field-made trigger device in his hands. It's mangled, recovered from the stable. Russo tells me this thing is yours, Corporal. Thorne stands at attention, mud-caked. Yes, sir. Miller turns it over. It's a violation of at least 4 articles in the manual, Thorne. Defacing government property, unauthorized modification of a service weapon, endangering the mission with whatever the hell this is. A lieutenant from G2, intelligence, clean and warm, scoffs. It's a field expedient booby trap, Captain. He's lucky he didn't blow his own arm off. This is precisely the kind of Yankee tinkering that gets men killed. The lieutenant represents the institution, the book, the rules. He sees a problem. Miller, however, sees the result. The lieutenant thinks you're a liability, Thorne. Miller looks up, his eyes bloodshot. But G2 also reports that for the last 3 days, all mortar fire from the 272nd's positions has ceased. Their command post in the church has been abandoned. A patrol found 3 officers' caps and a lot of blood. He pauses. We haven't lost a man on this ridge in 72 hours, but the Germans, they're reporting a Geisterschütze, a ghost sniper. They think we have a new silent weapon. They're terrified. Thorne speaks for the first time, his voice quiet. It's not a booby trap, sir. It's a trap. There's a difference. A booby trap is chaos. This is precision. He points to the mechanism. The problem isn't the rifle, sir. It's the sound. The enemy isn't shooting at me. They're shooting at a noise. All I did was separate myself from the noise. They can't kill a man who isn't there. The lieutenant starts to speak, but Miller silences him. He looks at Thorne, then at the device. He drops it on the table. I never saw this. This conversation never happened. But that thing is a mess. It's unreliable. He opens a footlocker and pulls out 3 spools of new nylon-coated comms wire and a small, high-torque spring from a vehicle's distributor. You have 24 hours to build a better one, and I want 3 of them. Miller's approval is not a blank check. It is a demand for a combat-ready system. This is the real test. The target is no longer a single spotter. It is a high-level SS staff meeting. G2 intelligence, now supporting. Thorne's rogue operation reports that a high-value Panzer Grenadier command unit is using a ruined hunting lodge as a forward coordinating post. The officers, arrogant and convinced of their safety, meet every morning at 0800 on a stone patio. Thorne's mission: decapitate the local command. This is not just sniping, this is assassination. Thorne, Diaz and Russo spend 48 hours in preparation. This is not a one-man job anymore. They requisition 3 M19903 rifles. They are not satisfied with one angle. They will create a 180-degree field of fire. They set the 3 rifles in a staggered, overlapping pattern in the ruins of a village 600 yards from the lodge. Each rifle is clamped, sandbagged, and aimed at a different part of the patio. Each is fitted with a new, improved wire trigger mechanism built from the parts Captain Miller provided. The 3 comms wires are buried in the frozen mud, leading back to a single, concrete-lined cellar 100 yards away, Thorne's command center. The morning is clear and brutally cold. The targets appear. 6 men, black SS uniforms, red piping, high value. They stand in a circle, maps spread on a table. Thorne is in the cellar with Russo. He has the 3 wires in his left hand, labeled 1, 2, and 3. Diaz is on the binoculars. Target 1, far left, range 610, no wind. Thorne takes wire 1. He pulls. The shot echoes from the ruins. The target drops. The other 5 officers dive for cover. The hornet's nest response begins, but this time it's a 20mm flak Vierling that opens up, pounding the ruins of Rifle 1's position. They're behind the table, Diaz calls out. They're safe from 1 and 2. Thorne nods, his face a mask of concentration. Russo, cover the exit. When I fire 3, they'll run for the door. Russo readies his own rifle. Thorne waits. One officer peeks out. Wait! Diaz says. A second officer, the clear leader, stands up to shout orders. He thinks the danger has passed. Now, Thorne! Rifle 3! Thorne yanks the 3rd wire. The rifle, from its completely different angle, fires. The SS officer is thrown back. Chaos. The remaining officers sprint for the lodge's door. Crack. Russo, firing from the cellar, takes a 3rd. 3 officers gone in 30 seconds. The Germans saturate all 3 empty rifle nests for 20 minutes. Thorn and his team are already packed and moving, slipping back to their own lines before the counter-barrage even ends. That day, 19 SS officers and NCOs were confirmed vanished. The offensive in their sector collapses. The immediate consequence is a deafening silence. The German Volksgrenadier and SS units in the Hürtgen, convinced the Americans have deployed a new, invisible and terrifyingly precise weapon, pull back from their forwardmost listening posts. The psychological impact far outweighs the physical. A captured German NCO's interrogation report states, "We cannot fight ghosts. The Amis are shooting at us from positions we know are empty. We see the nest destroyed, but the shots keep coming." Thorn's invention has single-handedly broken the enemy's iron grip on the impossibility of the West Wall. Captain Miller's official after-action report makes no mention of a wire trigger. It reads, "Effective sniper overwatch and aggressive counter-battery fire, coordinated by 112th Regiment, resulted in the neutralization of 19 high-value targets and the subsequent collapse of enemy resistance in Sector L." In the long term, Thorn's invention is never standardized. It is a field-expedient solution to a unique problem. The war is becoming mobile again. As the Allies break out of the Hürtgen and cross the Rohr, the static trench warfare problem vanishes. Thorn's trigger device is a brilliant footnote, a piece of battlefield ingenuity that solves an impossible problem, only for the problem itself to be rendered obsolete by the advance of the main army. The concept, however, the separation of the operator from the risk, filters into the Army's G2 and Ordnance Corps. It lays the conceptual groundwork for future technologies. Remotely detonated mines, wire-guided missiles, and decades later, the remotely operated weapon stations, CROWs, that will protect gunners on Humvees. Elias Thorn himself does not become a hero. He is quietly transferred to a G2 intelligence unit, where his unique problem-solving mind is used to analyze enemy defenses rather than actively engage them. He receives a Bronze Star, the citation vaguely praising his meritorious service and tactical innovation. After VE Day, he is honorably discharged. He returns to Vermont, uses the GI Bill to open a small engine and tractor repair shop, and marries. He never speaks of the Hürtgen forest. He never tells anyone about the ghost trigger. His children and grandchildren know him as a quiet, kind man who could fix anything. The 19 SS officers, the wire, the cold, and the terror of the West Wall are locked away. He dies in 1998, a humble mechanic, his secret buried with him. The story of Elias Thorn is not a story of a single, war-winning invention. It is a testament to a universal truth. Innovation is not the domain of generals and engineers in clean laboratories. It is born of necessity. It is born in the mud, in the cold, and in the desperate minds of those at the sharp end who are told something is impossible. Thorn's wire trigger is a direct ancestor to the robotic arms of a bomb disposal unit, the unmanned drones patrolling a perimeter, and the teleoperated surgical machines saving lives in a disaster zone. The principle is the same. Separate the operator from the risk. Protect the human and let the machine take the impact. We look today at the silent, moss-covered bunkers of the West Wall. They are tourist attractions now, their dragon's teeth blunt and half-buried. It is quiet. The birds have returned to the trees of the Hürtgen forest, but if you stand there in the cold, damp air, you can almost feel the weight of that impossibility that Thorn and his generation faced. They are silent witnesses to a time when a single quiet man from Vermont, armed with a piece of wire and an idea from his childhood trapping line, changed the math of war. He proved that no problem is unbeatable. It just hasn't been looked at by the right mind, from the right angle. Every great idea begins as an act of defiance against impossibility. What impossible ideas do you think could change the world?